There is an invisible frequency pressing against the center of your skull right now, subtle, steady, and practiced at hiding itself. Call it interference, fog, a pressure that dims clarity. Call it what the old esoteric teachers described as a deliberate obscuring of our memory of origin. Today, we will name that pressure the invisible attack on your pineal gland. We will trace where it touches the body, how it shows up in thought, and a simple, safe way you can check for yourself whether that veil is present. Before we begin, a short note on sources. Some of the language I'll use comes from findings recovered in the mid-20th century, the Nag Hammadi Library, and texts like the Gospel of Philip, which are non-canonical writings that circulated in early Christian and Gnostic circles. They contain symbolic descriptions and ritual patterns that some groups carried forward. I treat those texts as historical clues. Interesting, evocative, suggestive of an alternative way of speaking about memory and inner sight, but not as scripture equal to the canonical Gospels. We are reading them as a map, not as a medical manual. If, as we move through this, something in your body or awareness shifts, after the next short experiential check, I invite you to type the single word recognition in the comments. One word. That lets us know others are feeling into the same thing without turning this into spectacle. There is a reason these teachings were pushed out of the public square. When a practice lets people verify their own inner knowing, it undermines systems that rely on intermediaries. That's the historical claim. Communities whose members could point to embodied, repeatable signs of inner sight did not have to accept authority from an outside interpreter. Institutions, like any large system, tend to privilege interpretation over direct remembrance. Whether you see this as political, psychological, or spiritual, the practical implication is the same. Patterns were put in place, narratives, rituals, forgetfulness, that make it harder for a person to trust what their own senses might report about inner perception. To speak symbolically for a moment, imagine a radio tower aimed at your heart and mind. The primal source, call it the monad, source, or simply the ground of being, is sending out a subtle frequency that contains our capacity for remembering origin, for recognizing ourselves as more than a biography. The demiurge and the archons in the Gnostic scheme are not necessarily moral villains in the theatrical sense, but metaphors for the patterned forces that generate static, doubt, distraction, shame, mechanical thinking. They act like frequency controllers, shaping the field around the central antenna of the body so that the original signal is attenuated, smeared, or lost in white noise. When we translate that metaphor into embodied language, one anatomical symbol stands out: the pineal gland, the so-called third eye. I want to be careful with terms. I am using pineal and third eye as poetic, energetic shorthand for the center of inner perception, not as a claim about physiology or a medical diagnosis. Think of it as the center of reception, the axis through which certain kinds of inner sight are felt. The invisible attack I'm naming targets that axis by damping resonance, introducing secondhand narratives, and training attention away from direct sensory verification. From the older texts, there are descriptions of 3 marks, physical points used as a kind of embodied litmus test, and we will translate them into the pineal narrative so you can do a simple check. Each mark corresponds to an energetic function that relates to the third eye axis. The origin mark, felt at the very base of the skull, where the neck meets the head. In this reading, it is the gateway, the anchor point where source's frequency first tangles with the body's circuitry. When this place is open, there is a felt reception, a subtle sense that something from beyond biography is touching the nervous system. The perception mark, a lateral line on the hand, running along the outer edge. Think of this as an antenna, a sensor that verifies whether the body is tuned to pick up impressions beyond ordinary sight. In many ritual systems, the hand is used as proof, a place you can press and feel if a channel replies. The command mark, the upper point of the sternum, the hollow where voice and heart meet. This is the axis of declaration, the capacity to speak from inner resonance rather than petition. When the chest is aligned with the third eye axis, Speech becomes a transmission rather than a plea. These 3 points are not magical talismans that automatically make you special. They are access points for somatic verification. They allow you to put your attention on the body and notice whether there is a pattern that corresponds with inner clarity. Our work is simple: observe, test, and note. Embodiment is the test instrument. Your felt sense is the data. We will now do a safe, repeatable check. This is not a breathless ritual. It is a series of simple movements and attention shifts you can perform seated or standing. If at any point you feel dizzy or uncomfortable, stop and come back to normal breathing. These instructions are symbolic and somatic, not medical. If you have concerns about your physical or mental health, seek professional guidance. Begin by finding a comfortable posture. Sit with your back straight, feet grounded. Soften your face, unclench your jaw. Allow your breathing to settle into an even rhythm. Take 3 measured breaths. Inhale slowly through the nose. Exhale through the mouth or nose, whichever feels natural. On the 4th breath, bring your attention to the base of your skull, that ridge where your neck meets your head. Place the pads of your fingers gently there. Notice temperature, texture, any little pull or ease under your touch. Do you feel a subtle warmth, a tiny fuzz of pressure, a tightening, or nothing at all? Whatever you notice, name it silently. Warm, cool, tight, neutral. Don't interpret. Simply register. Release your hand. Let the awareness remain for a moment. Breathe. Now turn your attention to the lateral edge of your non-dominant hand. With the other hand, trace a line along the outside of the hand from the base of the little finger toward the wrist, the spot many traditions touch as a sensor. Slide your fingertip along that outer edge with light pressure. Notice any tingling, any prickling, any sense of connection. Again, name it without judgment. Tingling, still, pulsing, calm. Keep your breathing even. If a story arises, this is silly, this won't work for me, I'm not feeling anything. Notice the thought and let it float by like a cloud. Label it thought and redirect attention to sensation. The archonic patterns we spoke of often show up as quick, reflexive doubts. Expect them. They are part of the field. Observation, not argument, is the method. Finally, place 3 fingers lightly on the upper sternum, the hollow at the top of the breastbone. Press with gentle, steady contact. Breathe into the contact point. Does the press feel different than the hand or the skull? Do you notice a resonance, a subtle brightening or softening around the throat, a small shift in tone, an inner readiness to speak from a place of clarity? Sit with whatever arises. Name it: bright, dim, open, blocked. If you felt any slight changes, a little warmth at the skull, a faint buzz along the hand, a softening at the chest, hold that observation quietly. If you felt nothing, hold that too. Absence of sensation is information, not failure. Your nervous system is a map of your history as much as the present moment. It may take repetitions to shift the habitual patterns that have silenced subtle perception. You may notice immediate internal sabotage during these steps. A voice that says this is imagination, that you're being gullible, or that you must be special to feel anything. Name that voice. Call it sabotage. It may sound skeptical, anxious, snide, or weary. That voice is part of the field we called archonic. It functions to deflect attention. Do not debate it. Meet it with the same curious neutrality you used on the physical sensations. Notice the thought, breathe, and return to the body. The practice is not to silence the mind, but to increase the body's credibility as a source of data. If you felt anything, even the smallest shift, keep the attention there for another breath or two. Allow the impression to sink in as a felt memory. This is what reception feels like for me. If nothing shifted, let that be a baseline. We will work from baseline, not from expectation. Repeat this check another day in the same posture, and notice whether the pattern changes. There is one short, repeatable sentence I want to share, drawn from the structural patterns of the old texts, not as an incantation that guarantees outcomes, but as a symbolic declaration that aligns attention. The use of words in Gnostic ritual often functions as a hinge, brief, rhythmical, and easy to remember. The 9-word pattern carried symbolic weight in those contexts as a way to compose attention. Here, we borrow that architecture without implying supernatural guarantee. If you choose, softly say aloud or in your mind, "I reclaim inner sight. The light within remembers origin." Say it once. Feel how those words move through the chest and throat. Notice whether saying them changes the quality at the sternum, at the base of the skull, or along the hand. You are not commanding cosmic forces. You are adjusting your attention and issuing a clear internal intention. That clarity alone can shift the nervous system's orientation. Again, this phrase is a symbolic tool. It frames your posture toward sovereignty, not dependence on intermediaries, but trust in embodied verification. It is safe, repeatable, and portable. Use it sparingly. Observe the felt change rather than entertain extraordinary expectations. If you feel anything, a shimmer, a release, a tightening that softens, hold that as data. If nothing happens, you have learned your baseline for another day of practice. After this short check, you might feel lighter, confused, skeptical, or sentimental. All of these responses are valid. The important thing is that you now have a protocol you can repeat. 3 breaths, check the base of the skull, trace the lateral hand line, press the sternum, and notice. Over time, repetition trains attention to register subtler variations. Embodied memory accumulates slowly. That slow accumulation is what these traditions meant by anamnesis, the gradual remembering of source. A word on community. One reason these practices were suppressed is that communities formed around them, people who could show one another somatic signs of inner sight and thereby rely less on centralized authority. If you feel a shift here, you are welcome to the small step of typing recognition in the comments now. It is a soft way to know you are not alone. Do not use the comment section as an identity claim or a place to gatekeep. Use it as signal, nothing more. If you want deeper guided sessions, there will be further content that explores safe activation protocols, historical context, and supportive group practice. Those future sessions will include slower drills, partner exercises, and ways to notice the mind's interference without becoming dependent on anyone's interpretation. It helps to keep a few practical attitudes as you continue. First, curiosity over certainty. Curiosity allows you to report honestly. Certainty closes the loop prematurely. Second, patience. The bodies we inhabit carry cultural and familial habits that attenuate subtle perception. Third, compassion. The patterns we call archonic are not personal enemies, but legacies of systems and habits. Treat yourself as you would a friend learning to hear a new language. There are also ethical boundaries worth remembering. These techniques are about clarifying perception and strengthening personal sovereignty, not about proving anyone else wrong or creating hierarchies. Do not use them as a way to shame someone who does not share your experiences. Do not abandon medical or psychological care in favor of purely symbolic practices. If intense emotions arise at any point, panic, dissociation, or overwhelming anxiety, pause the practice and seek professional support. Before we close, one more detail from the texts that helps frame the whole. Many of the non-canonical writings frame Jesus in certain passages as a teacher who whispered about inner knowledge and methods of remembrance. When I reference those passages, I say, according to certain Gnostic texts, or in some early writings, because they represent a strand of interpretation, not an established historical consensus. The point I want you to keep is methodological. These writings suggest that inner sight can be supported by repeatable embodied signs. Whether you read those passages literally, figuratively, or as myth, the practical test remains the same. Return to the body and take notes. This path is not a promise of power. It is an invitation to become a more reliable witness to your own inner field. Over time, people who practice these simple checks report a stronger sense of agency, fewer moments of being hijacked by reflexive fear, and a clearer sense of when they are speaking from conditioned pattern versus felt resonance. Again, none of that is guaranteed, but the method gives you a place to begin. If you felt anything at all in the exercise, again, type recognition in the comments. One word, quiet signal. If you did not, bookmark this practice and return to it in a few days with the same posture and attention. The field shifts with repetition. We will continue in future sessions with deeper activation protocols, gentle breath work that supports resonance without forcing, partner exercises to confirm intersubjective signs, and a closer look at the historical texts so you can decide how much of their framing resonates for you. Those sessions will be careful, evidence-respectful, and grounded in embodiment rather than extravagant claim. For now, rest for a moment. Breathe. Allow whatever arose to settle. The invisible attack on your pineal gland is less a supernatural conspiracy than a pattern of attention that can be noticed and, with practice, reoriented. The antidote is small, consistent, embodied acts of noticing. If this has resonated, subscribe to the channel to join the next session, where we will practice a longer activation sequence and walk through the historical material with practical exercises. No grand promises, just steady instruction, community, and the chance to remember through your own body. Walk gently with what you learned today. Sovereignty begins with a single honest report from your own senses.